So, Doug, you actually almost worked at one point with Sean Combs, P Diddy, aka Puff Daddy, etc., etc. You were actually offered to write his book, and you're an expert in rap and music and the lifestyle that went with it. I've no doubt, I'm not going to ask you how much you were offered, I've no doubt it would have been a massive big paycheck, but you refused. And I wonder, firstly, you don't regret that now, no doubt. But secondly, did you have an inkling there was something not quite right?
Okay. Well, first of all, I was under contract to another book. And when when you sign a contract, you usually have you're not going to do something else that would impede. But at a certain point around Christmas of 2019, he's not represented by my agency, but his agency was floating this email saying, "We need a great writer." And my agent said, "Since you've written about the guy," which I had written some stuff, and I've met him, uh, I gotta throw your name on, so I wasn't offered it, but I was on, you go through this dog and pony show of being interviewed, but it was a recipe for fucking disaster. Excuse my language, because it was Christmas of 2018, and they said the writer would need to immerse himself fully and deliver the book by March 2019.
Wow.
So that's 3 months away. So the first thing I think of, like I've worked with Ice-T and Queen Latifah, LL Cool J. These are pros. The reputation I know about Puffy is that he's very mercurial, and the main thing, like, I don't pride myself. I write my own books, but I don't pride myself on. Ain't no shame in my game, they say about, like, that's a collaboration gig or a ghostwriting gig. You need access to the celebrity. And I immediately thought, this guy might just F off to one of his islands. I knew about the parties and stuff. So I absolutely said, no way. And I told somebody the story and they said, you could have been subpoenaed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if I had immersed myself for 3 months in his world, I'm no doubt would have seen these freak offs, and we can talk about that. But part of it is that let me say this in a pithy way. I have never been to a Diddy party, but I have partied with Diddy in a nightclub. I mean, I've been around him and I've seen him, and there's a kind of a dark energy. I'll tell you the story about partying with him if you'd like, but I would not have wanted to work with the guy. And I've noticed he has no memoir out, and that was 2019. So that's several years ago. I bet no writer took the job, or they just canceled the book contract.
Or they couldn't get that sort of intimacy with him that you would have needed to get to write a book.
Yeah,
because you do need an intimacy with a character. And it seems that Combs is certainly a peculiar character. We can at the very least say that. Now, the up-to-date situation is he's in prison. He's been charged with sex trafficking and exploitation.
Well, most importantly, the racketeering.
Right.
So there's a racketeering, the sex trafficking. But if you look at the racketeering laws, and I don't think you have them in Ireland, it's the RICO, it's the Racketeering Influence Corruption Act, which is how they got all the mob bosses. That is the thing that could get him life without any possibility of parole. It's engaging in a ongoing criminal enterprise. So the sex trafficking is bad enough, but if he's convicted of the racketeering, he'll never see the light of day.
And that is around the money, perhaps, that would have been made from this enterprise. Is that what RICO is focused on?
It's not just the money. There's a lot of people. There were a lot of security guards and bodyguards. This was not a one-man show. You've got a lot of people involved who knew what was going on. They know, oh, we're bringing in this porn star to have sex. So he's running, in effect, if it is a sex trafficking and non-consensual and underage, and there's a lot of other people. I've heard there's proffer agreements with a lot of people who were involved. So it's not just money, because I don't think he was profiting from it. It's you're running an organization that's criminal, right? And if they can prove that, and I'm sure they've got a lot of people who are giving testimony. So he's looking at some time. And I think what you're referring to now, is that there's a whole new bunch of lawsuits.
Yeah,
Just
so the news that's sort of breaking as we're talking is that Tony Busby, a lawyer from Houston who's representing claimants, says he has 120 new accusers, 60 of which are men, 60 of which are women, and many of whom claim they were underage and children when these alleged offences occurred. So he's in jail already, and he's got a raft of new accusations coming at him, according to this lawyer. They cover a period from 1991 to this year. So it's been a lengthy time, as you say, if covered by the RICO laws, that all this was going on. Now, before we start, right, given that we're in Ireland and we do have strict libel laws here that we tend to adhere to, we're out of the jurisdiction, so we're able to talk about it. And the laws are very different in the US. But I will say, for fairness' sake, that Combs has completely and utterly denied all and every one of these allegations levelled against him. He says he is innocent, that he has never sexually exploited or abused anybody, and he is sort of claiming through his lawyer that these people are all money grabbers. They're kind of jumping on a bandwagon in order to get their hands on his fortune. Now, that's his position, but obviously the claims against him are completely different to that. So where do we start, Doug?
We could start anywhere, but he denied his girlfriend Cassie Ventura. This was just a money grab.
Well, yeah, let's start with her, Ventura. She's his girlfriend. She's the first person, I think, is she, to make an allegation against him?
Not the first to make the allegation. No. She's the first one that he settled immediately. Okay. And once that's settled, because there have been so many lawsuits against this guy. I mean, if 100 people come forward with lawsuits and you've already settled, and he said, I settled with Cassie, and then the feds or somebody who had that videotape, I'm sure you saw it in Ireland, he's beating the shit out of this poor girl and dragging her by her hair. So he denied abusing her, and we've got videotape. And by the way, they seized a lot of videotapes in those raids. So, yeah, of course.
The raids happened last March, which was the last time that you and I spoke about this. In the aftermath of those raids, anyway, we spoke about it. So I suppose go back to the beginning and give us a brief history maybe of who P Diddy is and how successful he very quickly becomes.
Sure. Well, we did this on the last podcast, but that was in April, right? So if you don't mind, you want the story again?
Yeah.
Sean Combs is a guy who grew up. His father had been a hustler, a bit of a gangster mixed up with the heroin trade, was murdered, but grew up, and kind of went to a private boys' school. When I first saw him and met him, he was a club promoter. And this is the era of big nightclubs, remember?
Yeah.
Ministry of Sound in London I went to. They don't have many of those anymore. They're more lounges. And he had this hip hop night, it was called Daddy's House. And I used to go, but after a while there were so many shootings and things. I mean, that was the culture of hip hop in this is 91, 92. Mm-hmm. Then he was a intern and then rose up to be an artist and repertoire guy, A&R at Uptown Records. And he was Clive Davis, who's a 80-some-year-old Jewish man who discovered Whitney Houston. And Clive Davis, Arista Records. These are all these big names. Sean Combs was working under a guy named Andre Harrell, who has since died, and split away. And after having discovered some pretty big names, Mary J. Blige, and he worked with Jodeci, he started his own label called Bad Boy. And the first artist on Bad Boy was a guy named Craig Mack, and he had a song called Flavor in Your Ear. But then up and coming right after that, he had a guy named Biggie Smalls, which there was already a rapper named Biggie Smalls, so he had to go by Notorious B.I.G. And I remember being at this big thing called the New Music Seminar at the Sheraton Hotel, and they were walking around, including Biggie himself, with these kind of placards, like when guys are on strike, and it said, "Who is B.I.G.?" And that was about 93.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Like Biggie just blew up. One of the best, most talented rappers. And Sean Diddy Combs, or Puff Daddy as he was known, was always in the songs. Like I was telling a friend of mine, I love Biggie, but I can't stand here at the beginning of the song, it's Bad Boy, come out to play. He's always in the songs. He's dancing in the videos. He did not start off as a rapper. In some of the videos, he was a good dancer, but if we're going to do the abbreviated version, he on the strength of Big, Biggie's first album is just brilliant, called Ready to Die. Bad Boy was just the biggest thing in the business. Then, of course,
So
there
he was
became this riot.
basically, he was self-promoting himself through the
Oh yeah.
talent and the upcoming success of others. But in the background, through Bad Boy, he was producing them, which for those who aren't in the business, means, I suppose he was kind of like, he was visualizing what their videos at those points should be like, what their looks should be like. Was he
Well, one of the
was
things,
he involved in that kind of thing?
yeah. So he would take producer credit. Uh, I mean, I don't know, is hip hop big in Ireland at all? Or, I mean, people are aware of how now it's all done on Pro Tools. Like I could be producing on this little computer here, but we used to go big studios, which are the same ones where U2 and the Beatles and with 48 tracks. So there was two kinds of producers. There were the beat makers, really the young guys who were making these amazing samples, and then there'd be Puffy, who would be the executive producer. So a lot of those songs he said he produced, but he would be, he basically often ripped off a younger guy. So yeah, he took a lot of credit as producers, and then this whole East Coast West Coast thing, which is now, I mean, I was watching all this. Suge Knight, who's another bad guy. There really was never an East Coast, West Coast beef. There was a horrible beef which involved many murders and many bad things between two men with giant egos, John Puffy Combs and Marion Suge Knight. And there was an award ceremony when Snoop Dogg, who is now like Mr. Lovable, interesting character, uh, it was in New York, and the New York fans were kind of booing a bit, and Snoop said, "What, the East Coast ain't got no love for the West Coast?" And Suge Knight famously got up on stage and he said, "Any of you artists don't want your executive producer all up in the video, dancing in your video, blah blah blah." And that was a direct saying, Suge Knight never appeared in any of his artist videos. He's a blood affiliated gangster. So that really kicked off what ultimately led to the deaths of two of the best hip hop artists, which are Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac. And Combs has been accused, this is a whole other part of the story, of paying for the death of Tupac and possibly being involved in the death of his best artist, Biggie. So it goes very deep. The first horrible thing that I was involved with, meaning I witnessed it, was he and a really lovable, great overweight rapper. He was called the Overweight Lover, Heavy D and the Boys, and they promoted this basketball tournament, a celebrity basketball tournament, which involved rappers and well-known NBA guys at City College of New York, which is a city university. They overbooked it by far, and 11 people were trampled. It was just one of these stampedes where the door was locked, almost like the Hillsborough disaster in football, things like that. It wasn't intended, and he settled. I remember he should have gone to jail for that. That was wrongful death, but I remember he ended up paying some of these people money. But already, I mean, I was like, how did this guy get away with? Any normal person that overbooked a venue and 11 people died would be doing prison time. So he's always been this guy that skates
Yeah.
somehow, and it's either you pay enough money or you have enough clout. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've seen him always in my mind as, I didn't know about all these freak offs and that kind of stuff, but I have always seen him as a not good person. And
Yeah.
nobody that,
And
sorry.
you're sort of describing, I mean, what was going on really throughout the 90s and into the noughties in that rap culture was this sort of what would now be a modern day call outs on social media between feuding gangs. They had these sort of crime gangs behind them, the Bloods and the Crips. They were claiming, linkage with one or other. And they were calling one another out at award ceremonies as opposed to
Yeah.
live on TikTok or whatever is what's done now.
Well, then it became diss records, and people really were saying stuff. And Tupac famously has a record, "Hit 'Em Up," where he said, Faith Evans was a great singer who was Biggie's wife. And Tupac starts it by saying, well, that's why I fucked your wife, you fat motherfucker. And he basically said, I slept with your wife. And that record, oh my God, everybody heard that. And a guy I was around, a Brooklyn gangster said, people are going to start dying behind this. Like it got really, really serious. Back and forth, more on the Tupac side. But Tupac had been shot in New York, and Puffy released a record by B.I.G. called "Who Shot Ya," which I don't think was ever intended to be about um,
Tupac.
Tupac, but the way he released it and the way it was marketed, so everything just escalated. And both of these guys, I mean, they died before they were 25 years old. It's crazy. Like we think about them as and Combs is now 54, at least according to his listed age. But yeah, it really escalated into what, yeah, would now be Twitter and Cardi B dissing with, yeah, but yeah, this was on wax, as we
And
would
it was,
say.
in real time, in the real world, it was, as you say, it escalated into a real life shootout, people dying. I mean, this was a very extraordinary thing to be happening within the entertainment industry. And of course, it was all being reported, and the public were eating up the various sides and who is
Yeah.
who and all that. But all the while in the background, and of course, Combs had become very, very wealthy, very successful. He obviously had a lot of talent, a lot of skill set to offer to this industry and people, apart from, okay, maybe he took a producer title one too often, but he certainly had a business prowess within that whole world, didn't he? And he was obviously able to see talent and nurture it.
Yeah, I mean, if he's a horrible rapper. And by the way, most of the raps that you hear him doing were written by other people. And that's kind of a thing within hip hop. If you have a ghostwriter, it's like if I ghost wrote somebody's a football. If Roy Keane wanted me to, you would not say Roy Keane wrote a really good book. You'd say that journalist did. But that the great rappers write their own rhymes, and sometimes off the dome they're just making up note. All his verses that on his records were written by other people, but if he had a gift, it was in marketing, having a vision. He threw great parties, and I don't mean the freak off ones, and he got involved in branding. You know, he had a label called Sean John. His middle name is John, and it was carried by Macy's. It was hip hop clothing. I bought a Sean John shirt. I'm glad I got rid of it. Jesus Christ! But
He got involved, didn't he, in alcohol, in a tequila and in
Ciroc.
a Ciroc vodka, yeah, which I nearly bought once. I didn't realize he
Oh,
was,
I've been
yeah,
to events where it was like promoted by Ciroc. You'd see nothing but Ciroc.
yeah.
And it
And
was
that was
crazy
his,
because
basically. And yet again, he was probably before his time a little bit. We're seeing a lot of sports stars, etc., now putting their names to
well,
alcohol.
yeah, Jay-Z kind of took it further because Cristal Champagne had the audacity because, that was rappers were always living the big life talking about, Moet Chandon and Cristal in France said, we're not really looking at that urban business. And I wrote this article in the New York Times where Jay-Z said they don't want our business. And he started his own brand of champagne, which is called Ace of Spades. And it's huge.
Right.
So the hip hop world, this has happened a few times with Timberland boots, where, the hip hop world embraces a brand that has nothing to do with hip hop. And I think now the executives are younger and smart enough not to diss this market. But if you're stupid enough to say, well, we're not looking at those black urban people as our main chat, we're looking at the people in in Monaco and the royalties of the world. But yeah, he got into the Ciroc, and then it got into that big company that Guinness
Diageo.
bought up Guinness. Yeah,
Yeah.
and got himself into that 1B club, the billionaire club. So he had enough money and enough clout to do pretty much what he wanted. And when you have enough money and you have enough clout, you can really make a lot of things go away. But he was involved with a lot of bad things through his life, even at the height of his fame. But yeah, to say something good about the guy, he certainly had uh, a sense of, or what do we, his finger on the pulse of what might be the next thing, and that's a skill, knowing trends and things like that. You have to be from the street and have your ear to the street to know how things are changing, right? And he had some very good artists, a guy named Mace, None of these guys are around, and none of them have anything good to say about him, which is a really interesting thing. There's not an artist that worked with him in his heyday who not only like will defend these latest allegations. They don't. They say they were ripped off for their publishing money. They were ripped off. So they, all the people that worked with him have nothing nice to say about him, and that tells you something, right? It's like you asked me about the lawsuits, how, they can't all be fake. Well, if every artist you worked with had a bad experience and said you were untrustworthy, maybe you were.
So I suppose for over 25 years, he's growing fabulously wealthy, fabulously famous. Within his private life, he has a number of different relationships that result in 7 children, I think, in total. But all the while, behind the scenes, he is what these accusers are now saying is having these very, very strange, perverse kind of parties where he is the director of a show, a pornography show that often involves people they claim that he knows, that he's in relationships with, and also underage children.
So to be clear, I think there were probably 2 levels to the parties. He famously had something called the White Party. Now, I don't know if they do that in the UK, but it's kind of a fashion rule that after Labor Day, which is September 4th, September 5th, you don't wear white anymore. So this was right before the end of Labor Day out in the Hamptons where the rich people go. And everybody wore all white. But you will see everybody, every movie star, everybody, Leonardo DiCaprio, everybody went to these white parties. Now, after the party, there would be what they call these freak-offs. So shall I explain what those are?
Please
or
do.
Do you? Okay. Well, freak, I don't know if it has the same meaning in Ireland. In Black American culture, a freak just meant, especially a girl, who would do anything sexually. She's a freak.
Right.
Rick James, she's a very freaky girl. It doesn't mean a circus freak. It means somebody who's very sexually
promiscuous.
Yeah, or just, she'll do anything. So he had these things called freak-offs. And I didn't know about this. I had heard, I guess I heard that, of course, there's sex at these parties, but drugging the girls, often his girlfriends, flying in male sex workers, pornography, usually stars of porn, I suppose, because they have freakishly large members or whatever. And he got off on watching them, often 2 guys with his girlfriend, and he'd videotape it all and pleasure himself, apparently. And underage, that's coming out. Men being penetrated by other men against their will. I mean, it's just like, it doesn't stop. It's literally like Roman orgies. I'm sure you probably heard this. 1,000 bottles of baby oil.
I heard that, and I also saw that there was allegations, and again, these are all allegations as they stand, that some of these freak-offs went on for 2 and 3 days, and at the end of it, those alleged to have been involved were just so exhausted they often had to be revived with IV drips.
IV, all of them, yeah. Because he would have the heat up so hot. I mean, they would go on and on and on. Part of it, I mean, I'm sure the ecstasy culture, which is now called Molly or MDMA. You get very dehydrated. You need, one thing about ecstasy and Molly and all that is you don't need alcohol. You want to dance and hug people but you need to drink water. If you don't, you can, die. So I think the IV drips were also because there was, he had people walking around with satchels with everything from cocaine, ecstasy, some of these drugs get ketamine. I mean, these women describe being given champagne and not remembering. So this is not only non-consensual sex, it's drugging women, drugging men. It goes beyond. What came out in the lawsuit you just mentioned is that there were kids as young as 9. And what a lot of people are speculating is, Usher, who's a great singer, Usher lived with Diddy for a while when he was young, and poor Justin Bieber. So everybody is wondering, were they not kind of being groomed into this? Um, if it was all consensual, you'd almost say, well, I mean, not the underage, but I mean, if it's men and men and women and men and threesomes, and you'd almost say, well, people, what happens behind consenting doors? But a lot of this was not consensual.
And there's also a kind of a
So,
sense of a sort of a coercive control by him, which is becoming, I mean, is a criminal offence here now, and it's becoming more and more before the courts. That sort of sense of that coercively controlling another individual. P Diddy was a very, very rich, wealthy individual with a lot of power, and I think I've read quite a bit of some of the accusers have said they lived in fear of him.
oh yeah.
They felt they were
So it,
almost trapped and kidnapped within his world.
so it was essentially about power, much more than sex. So I was writing about, remember when they had VJs on MTV, and she was just a beautiful woman named Ananda Lewis, and she was sort of, I don't know if Prince was dating her, but I was writing about her. So I ended up where I'm with in a banquette. Remember those big clubs with her and Prince, and then it comes Puffy Combs and J Lo. This is 1999. But J Lo, I remember saying, wearing skin tight pants and a belly chain, and then Derek Jeter, who was a big baseball star, and then Mike Tyson, and we're all in a booth, and little old me, and everybody's kind of looking like, who's that guy? And J Lo, I remember the crush of people, like a gravitational pull to be near that celebrity. And nothing interesting was being said in the booth at all. But the amount of people that, like at one point I had to go take a leak. So I told it was a velvet rope within a velvet rope. And I said to the guy, hey, you're going to let me back in, right? Like, like I didn't want to get locked. And everyone's going, I wonder what's going on back there. And I said, absolutely nothing is going on. Nobody's talking to, the only thing that happened, and I quoted it in the New York Times article, the crush was getting so crazy that J Lo said they're about to see the ghetto come on to me. Like it was just unpleasant. But I wondered, like, what do people think they're gonna get from this brush with celebrity? And at that point, Puffy was. So I already knew. So he's wearing his sunglasses. He always breathed through his mouth. It was a strange thing. J Lo was beautiful. I remember, if I could say this, allegedly, he had bad breath. And J-Lo was nice. She was nice enough. But my memory of that was I mean, Prince, he was huge in Ireland, right?
Yeah.
Little red Corvette, 1999. So my memory of that was Prince telling me that he was married. My wife is Nefertiti, but Ananda is my Cleopatra. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And then me being a Jewish guy, Prince was a Jehovah's Witness. And I remember him saying, brother, you got to be thinking about Christ consciousness. And I said, but I'm Jewish. It's Christ consciousness. And I had my tape recorder rolling. And to this day, it was about a 20-minute conversation. I have no idea what he was talking about. But that was interesting. What was going around Combs, and it was just the most banal, nothing. So I was starstruck a bit by Prince because that's my era of music. And I also think Prince was just a musical genius. I looked at Puffy as a guy that at that same event, a very well-known African-American actor said to me, and I may have told you this in the last time we went around, Puffy was trying to get in the movies. J-Lo, of course, became a huge movie star. And he said, Puff's never going to be an actor. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you ever seen he's always wearing sunglasses. You ever see behind his sunglasses? And I said, yeah. He said, dead eyes. No, acting is all in your eyes. The great actors, Liam Neeson, it's in your eyes. He said he's got nothing in his eyes. So I was having a pint the other night with a friend of mine, and I said there was like nothing in his eyes. And this friend of mine is a psychologist, and he said, you mean like psychopathy?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's there. So if you saw what he did to Kathy, and then he did this very awful, I've gone to Jesus, and it was so bad acting, and it was so insincere. And
I saw the apology video. It really was appallingly ham acting. I could
and you
probably
could
do better
see that
myself.
in his eyes were dead.
You could.
So I always thought he wore sunglasses because he was always, there's a lot of drugs, but Yeah, you know when you meet those people, I'm sure you've seen them in the gangster world. There's just something in the
Yeah.
eyes, and allegedly, I mean, I would say it is psychopathy,
Yeah,
or
there's
it's
something
just
that isn't there really, I suppose, that you see in most human beings.
yeah,
I suppose
empathy.
you can understand that celebrities, you talk about these surge of people trying to get near them, this sort of bizarre world they're living in. You can understand them living in a sort of a separate universe, having a break from reality completely and utterly. But then there's those, and you've seen so many of these, big individuals being taken down in the States in recent times, who also have this dark side that Combs is now
Yeah.
alleged to have had. That's a whole different thing than a break from reality. That is some sort of a sexual deviance that is
Well,
allowed to play out within that world because of their power, and people are afraid to, I suppose, destroy that huge celebrity.
see, I don't think I was ever as starstruck by hip hop, but uh, let's get into it. Harvey Weinstein, everything Miramax touched won an Academy Award. So I'm not trying to flex as or as they say in hip hop. I'm really not trying to brag, but I was a reporter for the New York Times, and my wife, well, my now ex-wife, I remember I got tickets to the premiere of Shakespeare in Love, and it was at the old Ziegfeld, the old movie house, and we show up, and Gwyneth Paltrow, I forget who, that was a classic movie. And there's Harvey Weinstein taking all the, everybody wanted to be around Miramax because their movies were great. Shakespeare in Love was a great movie. And look what he is. He's just a sexual predator that nobody knew it. I mean, I didn't know it. I mean, I'm sure the actresses who were forced into the casting couch, but yeah, there is this kind of sense that nobody wants the party to end. I wonder how many of the celebrities who really did go to the freak offs of Puffy are now going to be subpoenaed and stuff like that. Because I mean, who knows how much they remember if they were really high?
And
That's the other.
if these are proved to have existed, and that he's proved to have sort of directed these strange and criminal sort of scenes in front of him over days on end, he clearly had people working, those people who were walking around with the drugs, some of the people that were hired in, those who were working on these vast premises he lived in, etc. Is there problems for them? I mean, is
Of
there
course,
sort
of
of...
course. I mean, people talked about to get into the room there, there'd be, a couple of security guys. And I think I've told you about Gene Deal. He's if people want to look up his Gene Deal. He's a former head of security. And these guys are often former law enforcement.
He wrote the
So
book, did he?
no, he didn't write a
Oh, he
book,
didn't
but
write a book.
he's on there saying, everything that happened and all the other crimes that he kind of witnessed. So yes, everybody that was there coercing, passing out the drugs, being security for the door, they are all, I think, do they do proffer agreements in the Irish law? So they're all working out deals uh, so they don't do jail time. You know, I suspect there is going to be such a mountain of evidence. I think what's going to come out is that he videotaped it all. They're going to have it on tape. Who was there? Who was so? Yeah, just like John Lennon said, everybody wanted part of the party. So there's people who are absolutely implicated. That's why it's racketeering, because you have overseen um, a criminal enterprise in which, for whatever reason, people are afraid or being paid or bribed or whatever to not reveal the criminal enterprise. And I think his big strength, a lot of reasons strength, I'm sorry, but his power trip was that once he got these celebrities on these freak offs, he could blackmail them. He's known for having destroyed people's careers if they didn't he had this group called Danity Kane, and there's a girl that one of the women has come out and said, I refuse to, be part of it. And he just shelved their career. That's the kind of, and I don't think that's a sexual desire. That's a power desire. That's that sense of I can control you. I can control. I'm bigger than the law.
Which brings me on to the fact that Combs, Puffy as you call him, has been imprisoned at the Metropolitan Detention Centre in Brooklyn, New York, since he pleaded not guilty on the 17th of September to these charges that he used his power and prestige to induce women into drugged up sexual performances with male sex workers. So these were allegedly dubbed these freak-offs. So he's there since the 17th of September. How is a guy like Puffy coping in the Metropolitan Detention Centre in Brooklyn?
They have him on suicide watch. You read my book about Boris, the Russian gangster.
Yes.
So he's in the SHU. He's in the SHU, which is the segregation. That's 24-hour-a-day lockdown. I think you get 1 hour. Not necessarily that he's at risk to kill himself, but Epstein, when the guard turned away in the same prison, Epstein had some bed sheets and hung himself, right? So they've got to watch this guy 24 hours a day. His lawyer came up and said, we will pay 51 million. Now, I don't know what that is in euros, in bond.
$51 million is probably nearly around the same in euro from the last time I went to the States anyway.
$51 million in bond. And they said, no way. He'll turn over his passports. Well, I know enough about organized crime. You can get fake passports and all kinds of stuff. They then had an appeal to that. So it's gone 3 times. And the judge has said, you're a flight risk. You're a danger to intimidate witnesses. So he will not get bail, which means he is doing time in one of the worst prisons where, I mean, the best thing you might get is a bologna sandwich.
Yeah.
And he's around some guys that I wouldn't want to see, organized crime figures. He's also around people who are fans. This is what one of the things Gene Deal said. There's a lot of guys doing life or multiple life that are fans of Biggie, that are fans of Tupac. And they would love nothing more than to take a shank or, what do you call it in Britain?
A shiv.
Ireland, a shiv, yeah. Homemade, a lot of guys, you can make them very easily, sharpened toothbrushes and all kinds of stuff. That would be a feather in their cap to kill him. So he is, I don't know if he's suicidal, but he has gone from the life of the best champagne and caviar and everything else to, I don't know. By the way, photos were just released. I don't want to say the paper because I think it's a competitor of yours, but it was a British paper, of him at one of his freak-offs with a beautiful naked woman, and he's eating strawberries off her, and all these people are around him. So, that was his, I'll eat strawberries off the most beautiful naked woman in the world. And now he's lucky if he gets cornflakes for breakfast.
Yeah, and the company's not quite as beautiful. So how does the American justice system work? How long is this going to take for these cases to come before the courts? Will he be tried if he continues on his plea of not guilty with everything that comes forward altogether? Are these 120 cases we're talking about civil proceedings or?
No, this is the feds. Well, the evidence that are coming from these lawsuits may then get brought into the federal indictment. Now, when the U.S., and this is the Southern District of New York, when they bring you to trial, and he's saying he's going to trial, he's not making any deals, they have about a 99% conviction rate. And when you get your sentence in a federal prison, you have to do minimum 85% of it. So if he were convicted, I mean, from what I've heard, this wouldn't even come to trial maybe till 2026. I mean, these things, I remember when they caught El Chapo, it took quite a long time. So he's going to be in solitary confinement. I mean, I can't imagine it. Like, at least, I'd say 2 years before it even comes to trial.
Can he continue to agitate for bail? I mean, he talked about, going into house arrest in one of his own properties. Has he any more chances at that?
They denied that. No, they denied that. And I don't see why it would change. I mean, they denied it because they just said, you're not, I think witness tampering is the thing they're most concerned with. But no, I don't think he'll get bail. Bond, you're bonded out. So if you've offered 51 million, I mean, how much higher can you go? And I think the government is just, I don't think they would allow him to leave, even with the ankle bracelet. I think they would think this guy is scared enough, has enough money and power. Where did the Kinahans go? Dubai. There are places you can go to. There's no extradition. I don't think they'll let him out. I'd be very surprised if they keep bringing this up for, I mean, and his lawyer is almost comical. They 1,000 bottles. Do they have Johnson and Johnson baby oil in
They do.
Ireland? But
They
anyway,
do.
yeah, okay. So 1,000 bottles in one house, 1,000. And his lawyer says, well, he has a big house. He buys in bulk from Costco. Costco's like the big. Costco came out and said, we do not sell baby oil in any of our US locations. So he's got this lawyer saying
Yeah.
dumb shit like he buys in bulk. No, he had people, I mean, can you imagine slathered in baby oil and lubricant? It's going to get weirder and weirder. I actually think more and more things are going to come out, and there will be a mountain of evidence. And the only way he could possibly reduce his sentence would be to do a plea deal. But the problem is when you do a plea deal, you have to give up someone bigger than yourself. So that's why El Chapo couldn't, unless if El Chapo had been able to give up the president of Mexico. But he was at the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
So unless he were able to give up somebody bigger than himself, he's not going to get a deal. So he'll go to trial with a prosecutor that has a 99% conviction rate. And I think, as it's kind of hip hop slang, they'll say, he's going to be doing time under the jail, meaning he'll die in prison. And,
Yeah, because he's still only in his early 50s. He's not actually.
Yeah.
He's got a long way to go if he continues to.
So if he beats racketeering and he only gets sex trafficking, which is about 15 years, he'd probably get 20. Maybe he'd be in the best case, he'd be in a halfway house when he's 70 years old.
And finally, Doug, what does it look like for him with all that wealth he has? Is there a mechanism in the US that if somebody is charged, perhaps found guilty of some of these offences, can they go after his wealth, or does he get to keep that because it's been earned through legitimate means?
Well, that's interesting. With the drug traffickers, with Chapo Guzman or with John Gotti, you can say all of your money was made illegally. We're seizing it. I know the Kinahans, who we've written all about, they put some of it into boxing promoting and all that. So I don't know, like once you've put it into a legitimate business, I think he made millions of dollars legitimately in the record business. Well, I don't know. We put legitimately in quotes, but no, there's a lot of it he probably they can't come after because I don't think this criminal enterprise was not about a money-making venture for him. Power is so intoxicating. It may be more intoxicating than money and drugs. The idea that you have, and who knows who he has on tape. So I think his animating desire in life is power. He got all the money. He had the beautiful women. He had all the cars and all the houses. So why continue to do this? It's the power. It's the sense of control.
I would agree with you on that for sure. Most sexual abuse is about power, isn't it? Whether it's conducted by the rich or the poor.
I think with a guy like Diddy, look, I'm not going to psychoanalyze a guy. It's probably very low self-esteem at some root. So in Freudian, to your defense mechanism against your sense of worthlessness is to feel all powerful. I don't know. Hey, I sorry, I don't have a degree in psychiatry, but I mean, because how many great cars? He has so many houses. How many great cars do you need? How many houses do you need? How many private jets do you need? How many beautiful women do you have to seduce? At some point, it's never enough.
Never enough. Douglas, where can people get your books? Have you got a website?
You can go to douglascentury.com, and you can also go to Amazon. And then I have a new book coming up. My publisher is Avid Reader Press, which is a division of Simon & Schuster. And they were so sweet when we signed the deal. They took my deal and they put it on the mug. So this is the mug I drink from it. So my new book is called Crash of the Heavens, and it is recounting the story of the only military mission to rescue the Jews of Europe during World War II. It involves brave women parachutists. It takes place in 1944. So I'm finally breaking away from just writing about criminals, and I'm trying to write about heroic women.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to
I don't-
it's nice to change it up as well. But you have plenty of books about crime, and
Yes,
we've
I've
spoken to
got-
you about a
well-
few of them. But listen, thank you so much for your time today, and we will no doubt come back to this story.
Yeah, more to come because there will be a trial and there will be more bombshells because it seems like the TMZs of the world and the celebrity can't get enough of this. I mean, the next things are going to be which celebrities are on tapes. Jay-Z has been conspicuously quiet. A lot of the people that hung out with Puffy have said nothing in his defense. So we'll wait and see, who else. So you might have me back in a few months.
No doubt, it's a fascinating story. So, Douglas Century, thank you very much.